back in the studio.
Robert. What is going on in the world
Exactly.
today?
Exactly. And we are, Ericka, as you know, thrilled to have with us a very,
Yes.
all our guests are special, but this is truly a special guest, Rabbi Raphael Shore, producer, director, author, human rights activist, prolific in this area, who maybe can help us make heads or tails of this, especially with the monologue. And his new book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew?
Mhm.
Rabbi Shore, it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to the people.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. I really appreciate being here.
Happy to have you here. We're hoping you can help us make some sense of this because, growing up in the Jewish community, and a little bit similar background. So I grew up sort of not observant, not really. I mean, I was Jewish by culture, but I would liken it to a high holiday Jew, right? It's sort of like the Christmas,
Hmm.
Easter version of Christianity where we observed high holidays.
Yeah.
But as I got older, as I understood, my roots and who I was, I became much more observant, much more tied into it. And yet,
Mhm.
my friends will all ask me, of the monologue, why Jews are so liberal. Do you have a better answer than I have?
Mm.
Oh, that is a great question. I do. I do have a very good answer. I don't know if it's better than yours. I thought yours was very enlightening, and you had a very beautiful way of expressing, we say in Hebrew, looking favorably upon the Jewish impulse to be liberal and to be democratic comes from a very good place, an idealistic place. But unfortunately, it can become misplaced. My answer of how it is that the Jews let me step one thing back. I think that the fundamental assertion is incorrect that the majority of Jews are not voting for Trump. I think that's incorrect. Isn't that interesting? That's
All
already
Hmm.
right.
interesting,
Uh,
right? So I'm going
okay.
to start with that one because one, and I've seen a whole paper written on this, and I think it's important to set the record straight because it really looks bad on us that we don't support the president, even though he's so pro-Israel. So I think the majority of the Jews do. Why? Because there are segments of the Jewish population that don't really show up in the polls. I'm talking about
Mm.
Russian Jews, first generation, second generation Russian Jews who came from the former Soviet Union. I'm talking about Israeli Jews who number in the hundreds of thousands, first, second generation in America. And I'm talking about Persian Jews. All of these groups and Sephardim from the Jews from the Middle East. All those people, which make up probably at this point 30% of the Jewish people in America, they're all huge majority, 90% probably voting for Trump.
Hmm.
It's the old school. It's like you were saying, you and I come from a similar background, the
Mm.
Ashkenazi. It's the old school that show up in the polls and are, yes, perhaps only 30% plus that voted for Trump. But when you add those two groups together, the ones that are counted and the ones that are not counted, you already get the majority that I think are actually supporting Trump. Then you got the quiet people too. So I think most Jews, even in America, are actually on the right side of history and the right side of Israel. And I think that's an important thing to take note of. I'll happily share with you that article that I
I,
wrote.
I, and I would love to see that because, and again, I'm an old
Mm.
political guy from back in the day. The only numbers that I saw in exit polling were that somewhere one exit poll showed 21%, one exit poll showed 31% of people who acknowledge being Jewish voted for Trump, which means
Wow.
at that 70%, or even if I believe Ben Shapiro thought it might have gone as high as 40%, but even that, it's a 60-40 split, and that's being magnanimous. So I would love
Well,
to see if you had
yeah,
numbers that are different.
yeah, but it's because the Persian Jews don't come out as Jews. The Russian Jews don't come out as Jews in these polls.
Interesting.
They're not discovered there. In any case, having said that, so I think that's an important point. And the way I describe it is like this: Jewish people, although they care, for the great majority, care a lot about Israel, but because they have that liberal tendency, and because for non-religious Jews, progressivism and social cause and
Uh,
social values of the left have become their religion. As a result,
Absolutely.
like every human being, when they come into to consider the vote, there's 10 different factors. There's foreign policies, there are economics, there's social issues. For these liberal Jews who are not so connected with their Judaism, their number 1, 2, and 3 are things like abortion and helping the Black community and helping the poor and those social issues. Israel comes like number 5, 6, 7. So they end up voting for those social issues, which is the Democrat Party. Then what do they do? Well, what do you do about Israel? You're supporting a candidate who's not as supportive of Israel. So instead of being honest and just admitting, okay, I'm voting for abortion, I'm voting for these liberal causes, even though the candidate's not as pro-Israel, they rationalize. And that's the human tendency. Yep. They rationalize. So they rationalize that also my vote is going to the pro-Israel candidate because they don't want to say they're voting for a candidate, even though it's number 6. So that's my explanation. If you put Israel, if you're a Jew who puts Israel as number 1, 2, or 3 on your considerations for who you're going to vote for, then you're going to have the clarity to understand who really is the better candidate for Israel and the Jewish people. But the liberal secular Jews tend to really have Israel lower in that set of 10 priorities. That's how I understand it.
Got it. So I want to jump to your new book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Now, you have 18 movies to your credit as producer, as writer, director. I've seen Obsession. I've seen a few of the other ones as well. But now you're going to print media, and I assume it was no coincidence it came out October 7th, 2024. But this is which was so appropriate. This is a different kind of book, is it not? It's not really about anti-Semitism necessarily.
Yes.
I mean, it's a philosophical analysis or trying to understand the historical struggles of the Jewish community and why the Jews, right? And
I've struggled to name what this book is about, and then I also made a film about it as well called Tragic Awakening. But the book is called Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Learning to Love the Lessons of Jew Hatred. So that's already very interesting and provocative, you see. So the idea is that, yes, it's a film about the deeper roots of Jew hatred.
Right.
But that's not really my main purpose in writing the book. The main purpose was to see that through understanding the depth of the reasons for anti-Semitism, we can actually understand the reason and purpose of the Jewish people. And that is incredibly revealing. And we discover that most of the Jew hatred is actually because we're Jewish. And if they hate us for being Jewish, let's be Jewish. Let's embrace it, because the Jewish people have actually been beaten down. We don't know who we are. We've lost sight to a large degree of who we are. And the book is really a book that starts with why the Jews, from the anti-Semitism point of view, and becomes why the Jews, about why do we even exist and what are we really here for? What are we trying to do? And even that's even a bigger topic, because it's really about why are all human beings here and what is the unique role of the Jewish people in that bigger picture of world history.
Well, I love, excuse me, the way that you framed this. As a practicing Christian, I've often been confused about people who don't want to admit that they're Christian or don't want to share their faith or don't want to talk about it. And I'm like, it says, or they're afraid, people are going to be mad because they think I hate them or whatever. And I'm like, it says in our book that we will be hated in his name. Like, because of our belief, we will be hated. Now, obviously, that's different than Judaism, but like you said, be Jewish. You know what? They're going to hate you anyway, so just be Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that same way about all people of faith.
Yes. In other words, and in particular, I agree with you. This is about all people of faith. And that is what the book is about. The book is saying that essentially, when you bring into the world a message of faith, of moral responsibility, of
Yes.
the burden of freedom and being a moral, responsible human being, some people are not going to like you for it because
That's correct.
you're pushing something heavy. So what I bring out in the book is that Adolf Hitler understood this, and he was trying to wipe out the Jews because we were bringing this humanitarian ideology into the world about moral
Wow.
freedom and about
Yeah.
ethics. And he looked at it as Judeo-Christian ethics. He understood that the Jews started it, but the Christians had a huge impact on humanity, bringing these ideas of moral responsibility to the world. And he
Yeah.
rejected that. And so we explore that very deeply in the book. And it reflects, I say it's very provocative, but I say Adolf Hitler and the Torah, the Bible, have the same explanation for Jew hatred. Because Hitler understood who the Jews were.
Wait. You have to help me with that one.
I'm gonna explain.
Help me with that one. I need to understand that is a hell of a provocative statement.
Yes. So Adolf Hitler, I just explained very briefly. Of course, the book goes into it in much more detail. His ideology that the Jewish people were bringing a ethics of humanitarianism, love your neighbor, brotherhood of all men, human rights, ethical monotheism. The Jews brought into that world, that ideology must be destroyed. The Torah says that at Mount Sinai, hatred came into the world. It's a play on the words, because in Hebrew, Mount Sinai, Hebrew is Sinai, Har Sinai, and hatred is Sin'ah. Sinai, Sin'ah, very close. So it's a play on words. When God gave to the world when God gave to the Jewish people the Torah, the 10 Commandments, and the Torah at Mount Sinai, which was a mission to bring these ideas to humanity, hatred to the Jews came into the world at the same time, because God understood that, yes, it's amazing that there was going to be resistance to bringing those ideas into the world.
The straight and narrow path. Who wants to follow that?
Anti-Semitism. So Adolf Hitler and the Torah are saying the same thing, because that is actually, it's the resistance to the Jewish message, it's resistance to Jewish impact, the push, the drive to, which sometimes comes out in success, but it's pretty heavy.
Wow.
So is it that one can't is this a yin yang kind of an argument that one can't exist without the other? That one that the hatred of Judaism or the hatred of religion, because you're really talking about Judeo-Christian values, right? When we're talking about, much broader, and I would argue, the whole, as we've talked about ad infinitum in the show, the whole concept of the river to the sea and driving the Jews into the sea, which is what they're trying to do, which I say to my Christian friends, I said, if you're Christian, you're next, because it's not just about us, right? It's about those values.
Yeah.
But, and my father used to say, you can sometimes tell the caliber of an individual by who doesn't like them, which, it's sort of, a similar concept. So
exactly, yeah.
But I guess my question, because there are some provocative statements here, like, so when you say that Hitler was right, what was he right about?
Very good. Because obviously, I'm glad you said it, because I do want to clarify. Obviously, Hitler was one of the most evil people,
of course,
in human history. So there's no, I'm not questioning that. What I'm questioning, and what the book questions and challenges, is the conventional wisdom about Adolf Hitler. The conventional wisdom is that Hitler was just a raving lunatic. He was a madman who was just a megalomaniac for power. Somehow he whipped up the German masses into an emotional rave, and that caused them to say, let's wipe out the Jews. No ideas.
Because that can be done by a total madman. That's crazy.
Exactly. Now, you think about it for a moment. This Germany, if someone wanted to go to the best university on the planet in those days, where did they go? Germany. Yeah, that was the most success. It was the most sophisticated, highly intellectual place. And then somehow this guy Hitler brainwashed them all. It doesn't make sense. So the fact is that he had a very well-developed ideology. his ideology basically said that the Jewish people, he said, World War II was a war of Jews against Germans. All else is facade and illusion. Isn't that remarkable? And what he was
Wow.
saying was, on the surface, I'm fighting Britain, I'm fighting Russia, but behind it is an ideological war that has to do with the Jewish people being a spiritual superpower. And the Jewish people, his only real threat is that it's the only real threat, because the Judeo-Christian worldview is his only real threat. And even though Christians had done more to bring the Judeo-Christian ideas into European civilization, he understood that the Jews initiated it. The Jews were the originators. And more than that, that it was in the Jewish spiritual DNA, and to continue doing it. So Hitler said, the Jews are a spiritual and moral superpower, bringing an ideology that's going to be destructive to humanity. They've been super successful, not only in all aspects of life, but specifically in bringing this ideology in the world. And since it's in their spiritual DNA, I need to kill every single one of them. Genocide. So in that regards, he was right. And that's why the whole book is about flipping it on its head and saying, hey, Jewish people, hey, world, let's be honest. You've beat us up for 2,000 years. Our psyche's been messed up. You've messed us up. We're not so proud about being Jewish anymore because we don't know, and we've lost track of who we are. As Elie Wiesel says, we're like a messenger who forgot our message. But I'm trying to wake us up. I'm trying to say, hey, we are that people. We are an incredibly beautiful people who have made an incredible impact on humanity in positive ways, except sometimes the message that we bring creates resistance. That resistance is Jew hatred. And it was part of the package. It was part of the package. We knew it going in. We knew it from Mount Sinai. We knew it from Abraham. God let us know there's going to be a lot of resistance. The resistance is called antisemitism. But this is our heritage, and it's actually a beautiful thing to be Jewish. And if you're not Jewish, get on the right side of history, because this is the story of humanity. This is the story of human history. Are we going to become more spiritual beings, more enlightened, or are we going to be more attached to the animal kingdom where might makes right? And that's the view that Hitler was trying to bring the world to.
Yeah.
Who's afraid of the big bad Jew? Ericka, do we have the cover? Let's bring it up. I know, Rabbi, you're holding the book, but we actually have a larger picture to show our listeners and our viewers. And then before we go to break, here it is, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew by Rabbi Raphael Shore. Where can they find the book? I assume Amazon and everywhere, but your website before we go to break?
Yeah. All the major places where you buy books, it's available, Amazon.com, and of course my website, raphaelshore.com. You can find out more about it and the corresponding film as well that comes with it. So enjoy it. Thank you. And we're going to talk about the cover when we come back. Yeah.
We are going to talk about the cover when we come back. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back on the other side of the break.
Yes. And just so you guys know, there are links for all the websites and the books and all the things in the description. So go check it out.